So our last speaker is Brynne Kennedy, who's the CEO and founder of Move Guides. Brynne is also the founder of Mobility for All, which is a program led by Move Guides to support those fleeing poverty and conflict. She has won numerous awards over her distinguished career, including Entrepreneur of the Year in the Stevie Awards, Women Awards, and the Women of the Future Awards. She has also received London Business School's Distinguished Entrepreneur Award and was part of Management Today's 35 Under 35. Please give a warm welcome to Brynne.
So I'm going to round out the day by talking about developing a global company, the challenges and the opportunities that come with that. Just for context, I founded Move Guides 5 years ago, and since then we've grown to 350 staff across 17 different offices that span the US, Canada, Ireland, the UK, Estonia, Malaysia, Australia, and Hong Kong. So I have a firsthand experience building this company and all of the trials, tribulations, and opportunities that come with it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is commitment to being global and to building a company across locations. So what I mean by that is it needs to be intentional, and it needs to be top-down with everyone on the leadership team aligned. Because when you build a global company, you need to take that plan and rope it into everything that you design in the company. Organizationally, the talent profiles that you recruit, the way that you recruit, the way that you manage, the employee value proposition, and the management of those employees within the company. So at Move Guides, we made that commitment really early on. I actually founded Move Guides in London. I went to business school at London Business School, and prior to that I had lived in Hong Kong, Singapore, and India. And we have built the first platform to power employee mobility. So it's kind of based on my experience as a banker, founded it in London, and I wrote a really beautiful slide deck in business school where I said, you know, we're going to prove out this concept with mobility between London and New York with the investment banking sector, and that's going to be very strategically relevant, and every VC sort of says start small and prove out your concept and then expand, right? And that actually doesn't work at all in the employee mobility market. So I went and talked to all of our current customers, but at the time my friends in banking. They all said, we're not going to take a meeting with you unless you can operate across every country in the world. Because I am Barclays or I am Goldman Sachs, and I actually don't care that much if I can move people between New York and London if I can't do it to all of my other offices. So figure out how to do it everywhere in the world, and then come back and talk to us because the value prop is really interesting. Now, obviously, this throws the VC land into like disarray that you are trying to do way too much, way too early, and it's way too complicated. But that's the reality of our market, which is a $15 billion market with no other software players. So I kind of said, well, you guys want in early, we've got to build this global company, and we've got to figure out how to do that. So we committed to doing that super, super, super early at Move Guides. We were 20 people in London when we opened an office in San Francisco, and we were 30 people totally globally when we opened in another office in Hong Kong. So this is like extraordinarily difficult to do because you're building the company and all of the processes across all of these different locations. And I would say that the main thing that we did is we committed and we told everyone that we recruited really, really early on, we are building a global company from day one. We made it a mantra in our company. We only recruited the first 50 people who had personally lived and worked abroad and understood how to work in global teams, how to hop on a plane tomorrow if there's a meeting in London. We still do that for the most part. And we made that commitment. And we also embedded it in our values. So our values are, our first one is be global citizens. Our other ones are learn relentlessly, collaborate radically, make bold bets, and never ever give up. But the first one we talk about is global citizens. And we rope that into our dialogue, into our recruitment process, and we always try to look for, when we recruit people, some indication of having worked at global scale on a team, traveled regularly, studied abroad, worked abroad, et cetera. And that's been really, really powerful for our culture in terms of alignment of the team. So that's the first takeaway. We're going to go through 3 C's here. So that's the first C, is commitment top down from the leadership team, and embedding that commitment into everything that you design in the company and everything that you execute in the company. And by the way, I think this is true for kind of other specific cultural and operational things that you do within the company as well. We were just unique that we were global from day one. So the second C is communication when building a global company. So the way I think about this is when you have distributed teams and when you have a global company, you need to communicate relentlessly, like over communicate until, as the CEO, you feel like you're being completely pedantic to the team and you can't possibly say this over and over again. I often ask my leadership team, really, do I need to send another email on that? Do I need to say that at another town hall? I feel like I'm patronizing to the employees. And my sales leaders, my customer success leaders, they are always like, no one can hear the communication enough. Just keep saying it. People are still confused. A certain region, Blue Jeans failed during the last town hall, so just keep saying it. And that's been a learning for me as we've grown, because I kind of think everyone digests things the first time that they hear it. But if you over-communicate, keep sending emails, keep doing all hands, it really forges a unity within the distributed locations that is very, very powerful. So a couple practical things that we do. It's varied a little bit through the years, but for the most part, I send a weekly email to the company on what's happening. Now, some of my leaders do that as well. There's a marketing update email, a sales update email, a customer success update email, and we just share information, because the most detrimental thing that happens when you have a global company or multiple offices is silos between the offices, and it's just because people don't see each other and they don't communicate. So that's one thing that we do, is just a lot of email communication, as boring and basic as that sounds. We use Slack relentlessly. Again, boring and basic in this audience, but I will tell you that in other parts of the world and other types of companies, it can be hugely powerful. An example, we just did an acquisition of a company about the same size as us that has offices in Seattle and Dublin. And when I went to Seattle to introduce myself the first time, someone asked the question, like, what is it like to work at Move Guides? And so myself and our head of people and culture said, we communicate a lot, we're very open, we use Slack. And everyone was like, what is Slack? And I was like, oh God. This is starting off well. But anyhow, so we rolled it out, and we have been communicating as we normally do through Slack, and it's been a really, really powerful way to disseminate information and to integrate the two companies, which in this instance were very, very culturally different, and even more culturally different than when you get to Europe, the European piece of it. The third thing that we do is we do consistent stand-ups globally. So we do something called a Friday every single Friday. Every office globally, we have whoever is the most senior person in that office host a get-together for the team at 4:30 every Friday. And during the week, the teams globally all submit questions that they have on Slack. They just send them. It's anonymous. And my head of people and culture answers all of the questions. And if she doesn't know the answer, many of them relate to compensation and people things most often. But if there's things that she doesn't know the answer to, she will collaborate with the relevant person globally. And she puts together a spreadsheet with a different tab every single week and circulates it to all of the people that host those Fridays. So we end the week, we go through all the questions, same thing in every office. And then afterward, the spreadsheet is public. Everyone can look back at all the questions that have been submitted globally with all the answers anywhere in the world. They do repeat, so then we refer people to the spreadsheet. And it's just a really helpful way to unify the team as well as to communicate regularly and rigorously as we operate the company. We also do all hands every month. In times of dynamic change, I've done all hands every week or every other week. Again, sometimes feels like you're bringing people together really, really often, but really extraordinarily powerful in sharing information, minimizing any uncertainty within the company, and communicating information dynamically and regularly. The last thing we do, we started this year actually, we did it 5 years ago, and then we did it again this year for the first time, is we brought everyone together globally. So the whole company, for our kickoff, our sales teams had always done kickoffs as sales teams do. I personally don't believe in that. I think it segregates the sales organization from everyone else, and I'm like, why do the sales guys need to get revved up for the year and the engineers don't? They just need slightly different content. So what we did this year, which we'll be doing going forward, is we brought everyone together globally for a week. We did 2 days together as a company, combination of corporate strategy, corporate goals, culture, and kind of networking, collaboration activities. And then we did 2 days of breakout by team, which each of my leaders ran. I left so that they could all lead them. But all the teams felt equal. They felt like they had the same information. They had an amazing time together. You know, what you see when teams spend 4 days together and they collaborate and they communicate and they all have access to the same information and they all feel like they're treated fairly is amazing. And it's an amazing outcome on the backs of that. And then the third C is collaboration. So you may have heard when I went through our values that one of our values is radical collaboration, or collaborate radically, because I like verbs at the beginning of values. So we have this value because, number one, it's the third C in how to be successful as a global company. But number two, because it is so important, I think, for any company, in particular, any multi-location company. And we've had our ups and downs through the years trying to build a true culture of what I would call radical collaboration. We've had silos develop between offices, between teams. We've had, you know, all the normal stuff as you scale. You lose a deal and someone points a finger at someone else. We've had that. But we've made also a really, really active effort to overcome that through activities that we create, the way that we work, and then setting expectations for people. So I'll give you a couple of examples of how we've fostered collaboration. So firstly, when we did that team summit and we brought everyone together, we made the theme about fostering radical collaboration. So the team is all like, it's awesome, we're gonna have such a fun week, we're gonna see everyone from other parts of the world. I did my opening, I was like, guess how much, you know, this is costing this much. You guys are probably curious why we're doing this. We're doing this to foster radical collaboration for a couple other reasons. And success will be if you spend the next 48 hours with people that you don't normally work with and you build bridges across teams, across roles, and across geographies. So we had different seating every day. We made sure that people who sat next to each other didn't work in the same team or the same office. We had activities. We did a spaghetti challenge. You get all this spaghetti and marshmallows and you try to build the highest structure. And we did a learning activity from each of the different teams so that we could foster empathy, which is the basis of collaboration across the teams. So we had one of our tech leads do a how to code session. This was mildly successful, so if anyone wants to try this, I can give you some tips on maybe how you can do it better. But in theory, we tried to teach the entire organization how to write a particular set of code so that they all could have empathy for the engineers. We had a sales guy do a success story, and then we had him teach everyone the corporate pitch. That was also mildly successful, so I have a few tips on that. But we did a lot of different things like that to foster both collaboration and empathy across the teams. And I think the highlight was, and I actually stole this from MuleSoft, so I won't take credit for this, but rather than having organized dinners both nights where everyone sort of sits at a table and listens to a speaker, we gave everyone $60 on the second night, and we made groups of people, and we said, go out on the town and do whatever you want with your $60. We don't care if you have coffee all night and debate our strategy. We don't care if you go to a bar and you guys drink all night with your $60. We don't care if you spend $600 and you go to a dinner and you want to pay the difference, $440. And so, but we made the teams. And we made a specific effort to put people together, and many of these people didn't even know each other at this point, between offices, teams, and different levels of people. And we gave them their teams on Slack. We created a Slack group for each of the different teams. And we were like, go plan your evening in this Slack channel. Here is, if they were groups of 10, here's $600 for you guys to spend out on the town. And then all we ask is that you share pictures and we talk about it tomorrow. And people did like wildly different things. You know, some people went bowling, some people went to the bar, some people like went on a night walk around Seattle apparently. But it was really exciting and interesting to see the collaboration that grew from that and hear people talk about it the next day. And I think things like that are so, so important to humans. They're so, so important to companies when you put people together. And they're the basis of successful collaboration within a fast-growing organization. So those are the 3 C's that I personally use for building a global company. They've been pretty successful for us, 17 offices, and we've had an average 200% top-line growth rate. We've raised about $100 million to date. And they are collaboration, communication, and commitment. And I would recommend that as you think about, it doesn't have to be global, but think about building organizations with multiple offices. I think everyone will have more than one office at some point in their company, whether it's between Seattle and San Francisco, or New York and Austin, or New York and San Francisco. The principles are the same. It's just having people that are not in the same location that don't see each other every day. The last thing I wanted to talk about with building a global and distributed organization is the idea of presumptive expectations. So one of the things that's really hard about running and leading an organization as you grow and you have multiple offices is that as humans, it's just easier to work with people when you see them. It's easier to be friends with them. It's easier to be married to them. It's easier to date with them. It's just part of being human if you see people every day. You know, when you run into someone in the elevator and you ask them how their child's soccer game was, you're building trust with that person. Or when you swing by their desk and you notice that they're eating a salad for lunch and you had the same thing, you are building trust with that person. All of those things are very, very difficult to do if you don't see people day in and day out. And that's why it's hard to get teams working together when they are distributed and to lead that. There's a concept in psychology that we talk about internally called swift trust. And so swift trust is the idea that you trust people by default when you meet them. You assume that they know what they're doing when you start working with them. So the best example of this is an airline crew. So many, many, many people that fly planes together, the flight crew and the flight attendant crew, haven't actually worked together before. They might all work for United, but many of them have never actually been on the same flight together. You know, they get their schedule, they show up on the plane, they say hello, and they assume that all the other people that are staffed to that flight know what they're doing. They don't sort of say, oh, did that guy work at American Airlines last week? Does he know what he's doing? They don't have time. They need to fly the plane safely, and they need to get you from A to B. And that is the concept of swift trust. And the airline industry, with one of the highest safety ratings in the world, I just got off a horrendously bumpy flight, and I was like running through the statistics of airplane travel in my head to like calm myself down over Detroit. So they do have one of the highest safety ratings in the world, and that whole industry operates because the people that fly planes and manage the experience of the customer operate with swift trust. So I tell my team this all the time is we need to assume positive intent for everyone. We need to assume all people and circumstances are our allies and assume swift trust, that everyone knows how to do their job, everyone is here for a reason, and it's our job to immediately and efficiently start working with each other on any new project that you guys are staffed on together. And we talk about that a lot, and we kind of call each other out a lot. So sometimes in my leadership team meeting, someone will say something and someone else will say, are you assuming positive intent? The other person will be like, oh, no, I wasn't. I was just kind of annoyed for a second. But we really hold each other accountable to that. And I think that is a really, really key thing in scaling. Scaling in any location, but even more so across multiple locations, because you simply don't have time to not have swift trust in people. And you need to trust your managers, trust your performance review cycles to identify if someone is not doing their job, but not spend time worrying about whether you should be trusting someone to do their job. So that's the basis of how we have thought about getting a team together to work efficiently who has trust in each other and who can work together. And I'll just leave you with the fact, just a final thought. Diversity and different locations are the biggest superpower that an organization can have, but they are also the biggest challenge. That's why all the research on diversity, whether it's nationality, gender, socioeconomic status, shows that it takes longer to get to the best decision, but that the decisions are better. So your job as a leader is to take your organization through that cycle so that all of the decisions and the outcomes in the company are better because of that diversity and because of those multiple locations, not the alternative. Thank you.
Appreciate that.